6 months after humanity's departure, the Council was on the edge of complete collapse. 12 worlds faced genuine starvation. The carefully balanced agricultural network that had fed billions had depended on human farming techniques and distribution systems. Without them, food rotted on producer worlds while consumer worlds went hungry. The pirate attacks had increased by 400%. Hostile forces that had once feared Council retaliation now struck with impunity. The defense network was full of holes and everyone knew it. 3 member species had formally withdrawn from the Council. 5 more were considering it. But Velthar refused to accept defeat. He had spent months gathering support, building a coalition of species who believed the solution was simple: find the humans and force them to return. Not through negotiation, but through strength. They are bluffing, he told his supporters. Humans are emotional creatures. They made a dramatic gesture to get our attention. Now we show them we are serious. We find their new colonies, we demonstrate our power, and they will come crawling back. Costel had tried to stop him. She had argued that pursuing humanity would only make things worse. But she no longer had the authority she once held. The Council was fractured, desperate, and scared. Velthar's promises of a quick solution were appealing, so she watched as he assembled his armada. 200 warships, the largest military force the Council had ever gathered. It represented the combined might of 7 species. It was, Velthar promised, more than enough to handle whatever pathetic defenses the humans had managed to build. The fleet departed with great ceremony. Media across Council space broadcast the images. Massive warships moving in perfect formation, weapons bristling. A display of power meant to show that the Council remained strong. Velthar led from his flagship, a Chilix dreadnought that measured 2 kilometers from bow to stern. He stood on the command deck, his exoskeleton polished to a brilliant shine, confident in his inevitable victory. They followed the traces humanity had left behind. Faint energy signatures, navigation data extracted from abandoned human vessels. Slowly, over weeks, they pushed into uncharted space beyond Council borders. Then they found the marker. It hung in the void between stars, a simple beacon broadcasting a message. Velthar ordered it played on all ship channels. A human man's face appeared on every screen. He looked young, perhaps 30, with calm eyes and a slight smile. His uniform bore insignia nobody recognized. I am Minho, Defense Coordinator of the Human Commonwealth. You are entering human sovereign space. The Galactic Council holds no authority here. Turn back now. Your vessels will be disabled and returned to Council borders. Your crews will be unharmed. This is your only warning. Velthar clicked his mandibles in what translators rendered as laughter. One human making threats against an armada. These fools have lost their minds. He ordered the fleet to advance. They crossed the marker point and continued inward. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Velthar grew more confident. The humans had no defense. They had been bluffing after all. Then Minho's face appeared again. Not on a beacon, but directly on every ship's internal systems. You were warned. Defensive measures activating. What happened next would be discussed in Council space for generations. Analysts would study it. Military academers would teach it. And everyone would struggle to understand how completely humanity had surpassed them. Every ship in Velthar's armada stopped simultaneously, not slowed down. Stopped. Instantly, as if some massive invisible hand had grabbed them all at once. Inertial dampeners kept the crews from being turned into paste, but barely. Then the weapons failed. Every gun, every missile, every energy cannon simply fused. Metal melted and reformed, rendering them useless but not dangerous. No explosions, no fires. Just weapons transformed into solid lumps of metal. Propulsion died next. The great engines that had pushed these massive ships across interstellar space went silent. Power remained for life support and basic systems, but nothing else worked. 4.3 seconds. That was how long the entire process took. 4 seconds to completely disable 200 warships and render the Council's military might impotent. Velthar stood frozen on his command deck, unable to process what had happened. His officers shouted reports, but they all said the same thing. Everything was gone. They were dead in space, helpless. Then human ships appeared. Not warships, tugs, industrial vessels designed for moving cargo and disabled ships. They were small, unimpressive, and they came by the dozens. They attached towing cables to the Council ships and began pulling them back toward the border. It took 3 days. 3 days of silent humiliation as human tugs dragged the entire armada back to Council space, like children pulling toy boats. The humans did not respond to communications. They did not make threats. They simply towed the ships and left them at the border. Velthar's flagship was delivered last. A human vessel approached and a docking request came through. Velthar wanted to refuse, but his ship was dead. He had no choice. The human who boarded was a woman, perhaps 40 years old, wearing a captain's uniform. Her name badge read, Hana. She walked onto Velthar's command deck, escorted by 2 unarmed crew members. "I am Captain Hana," she said calmly. "I am here to ensure your life support systems are fully functional before we release you. We take no pleasure in this, but you were warned." Velthar tried to speak, to threaten, to intimidate, but his translator failed. Hana reached into a pocket and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the nearest console, and suddenly his translator worked again. "There," she said. "We disabled your translator along with your weapons. We wanted this conversation to happen clearly." "You dare," Velthar began. "We dare nothing," Hana interrupted, her voice still calm. "You came into our space with warships. You ignored our warning. You attempted to threaten us into submission. We responded with minimal force necessary to protect ourselves. Your crews are safe. Your ships can be repaired. We could have destroyed you. We chose not to. Do you understand the difference?" Velthar said nothing. What could he say? She was right. They had been completely at humanity's mercy, and humanity had chosen mercy. Hana activated a communications panel. Her face appeared on every ship in the disabled armada, and on every screen back in Council space. "I am Captain Hana of the Human Commonwealth. I speak now to the Galactic Council and all its citizens. For 340 years, we tried to be your partners. We served with honor. We contributed everything we had. And you treated us as lesser beings." She gestured at the disabled ships around her. "This armada came to threaten us, to force us to return. We have demonstrated that we cannot be forced. We have technology you do not understand, capabilities you cannot match. We have moved beyond you." Hana's expression softened slightly. "But we are not cruel. We are not like you. Your crews are safe. Your ships will be released at the border. You will return home with a message. We are not your warriors. We are not your engineers. We are not your servants. We are not your inferiors. We never were. We have left. You are not welcome in our space. We will trade with you if you approach honestly as equals, with proper contracts and mutual respect. But we will not be threatened. We will not be intimidated. And we will not return." She looked directly at Velthar. "If you try this again, the results will be the same. We do not wish to harm you, but we will protect ourselves. Always. Remember that every time you think about hunting humans again." Hana and her crew left. Within an hour, the human tugs released the Council ships and disappeared. Slowly, emergency power restored minimal engine function. It would take the Armada 3 weeks to limp home. Velthar sat in his command chair, his confidence shattered. He had led the greatest military force the Council could assemble. Humanity had swatted it aside like an insect. The gap between them was not small. It was vast, perhaps unbridgeable. Back on Nexus Station, Kostel watched Hana's speech on repeat. The human's words rang in her mind. "We are not like you." That, Kostel realized, was the real judgment. Humanity had not just left because they were oppressed. They had left because they had grown beyond the Council's petty cruelties and power games. They had become something better while the Council remained stagnant. The judgment was not one humanity would deliver through force. It was one the Council would have to face every day, the knowledge that they had let something precious slip away through their own failures, and there was no appeal. No second trial. The verdict was final. 2 months had passed since humanity vanished, and the Council was dying. Not quickly, not dramatically, but with the slow certainty of a machine losing its vital parts. Sola stood in the records archive, surrounded by data crystals that held centuries of Council history. She had barely slept in weeks. Her supervisor had ordered her to stop investigating, to accept that the humans were gone and focus on adapting to their absence. But Sola could not stop. Every file she opened revealed another crack in the foundation, another way the humans had held everything together. The economic reports were terrifying. Human merchant vessels had carried 60% of all trade between Council sectors. Without them, Goods piled up on producer worlds while consumer worlds faced shortages. The Brevac system was running out of medical supplies. The Keltoran homeworld had food riots. 3 minor species had already started discussing whether to leave the council entirely. But it was the hidden details that kept Sola awake at night. She had found something in the old personnel files. A report filed 15 years ago by a council investigator named Doyen. A human himself, he had documented what he called systematic resource reallocation, ships being built in remote sectors, personnel transfers that did not add up, resources moving to locations that did not exist on official maps. Doyen had submitted his report with a warning. The humans were preparing for something. They needed to be engaged, to be heard, to be treated as equal partners before they decided the partnership was not worth maintaining. The report had been dismissed. Doyen had been reassigned to a minor outpost in the frontier zones. His warnings had been ignored. Sola found another file, this one from 8 years ago. A human scientist named Mireille had requested funding for research into advanced propulsion systems. The proposal had been rejected because, as the council committee noted, human species already possess adequate transportation technology for their needs. Advanced systems should be reserved for species with greater territorial requirements. The translation was simple. Humans should not have technology that would let them leave council space easily. But Mireille had done the research anyway. Sola found evidence of private funding, of secret laboratories, of breakthrough discoveries that had never been shared with the council. The humans had built their escape route right under everyone's noses. In the council chambers, the situation was growing desperate. Costel had called daily sessions to address the cascading failures. Today's topic was defense. General Cross of the Varkan military stood at the center of the chamber, his scaled form rigid with barely controlled anger. Our border defenses are at 40% capacity. The human fleets provided the majority of our rapid response capability. Without them, we cannot maintain adequate coverage. Surely other species can fill those positions, Velthar suggested. He had been unusually quiet since the humans left, but today he seemed determined to minimize the crisis. With what ships? Cross growled. Human shipyards produce 70% of our military vessels. Their designs, their innovations, their manufacturing capacity. Gone. We cannot replace them quickly. Then we use existing resources more efficiently, Velthar insisted. We are already doing that, Cross snapped. And pirates know it. We have had 17 raids on outer colonies in the past month. Before the humans left, we averaged 2 per year. The predators are circling. Costel raised a hand for silence. We need to understand how this happened. We need to know why they left. They left because they are ungrateful, Velthar said. We gave them membership in the council. We allowed them to participate in galactic civilization, and they repaid us with betrayal. Sola could not stay quiet anymore. She stood from her observation seat, knowing she was breaking protocol but unable to stop herself. We did not give them anything, she said, her voice shaking but clear. They earned their place. They built half of what we take for granted, and we treated them like servants. The chamber erupted in protest, but Sola continued louder now. I have spent 2 months in the archives. I know what we did. The Tajan colony, 40,000 humans dead in a Chilix military exercise that nobody was ever punished for. The technology laws that forced human scientists to surrender their patents without compensation. The breeding restrictions we placed on them, but no other species. That is enough, analyst, Costel said, but her voice lacked force. It is not enough, Sola replied. We need to face what we did. They left because we gave them no choice. We took everything they offered and gave nothing back but restrictions and contempt. Velthar rose, his exoskeleton gleaming with agitation. These accusations are... The lights in the chamber flickered, then died. Emergency systems kicked in after a moment, bathing everything in red emergency lighting. The environmental systems groaned, struggling to maintain atmosphere. Power grid failure in sectors 7 through 12, a technician announced. Human maintenance systems are degrading faster than predicted. We do not have enough trained personnel to keep them running. The chamber fell silent. In the red darkness, the reality of their situation became clear to everyone. After the session ended, Sola returned to her quarters. She found a data chip waiting for her, placed carefully on her desk. No note, no identification, just the chip. She loaded it into her terminal with shaking hands. A human face appeared on the screen. A woman middle-aged with tired eyes but a calm expression. The nameplate on her uniform read, Bora Intelligence Division. Hello, Bora said. I am leaving this message for whoever is brave enough to look for the truth. My name is Bora. I was Ambassador Hyun's intelligence officer for 20 years. I spent those years documenting everything the Council did to humanity. Every injustice, every broken promise, every act of casual cruelty that you all pretended not to see. Bora's image leaned forward. This chip contains all of it. Every file. Every recording. Every piece of evidence showing what the Council really is. I am leaving it for you because I believe some of you are good people trapped in a corrupt system. Maybe you can use this information to make things better. Maybe you cannot. But you deserve to know the truth. The recording paused, then Bora spoke again, softer this time. We did not want to leave. We wanted to stay. We wanted to be partners, friends, family with you. But you would not let us. You saw us as tools, as resources, as something less than you. And we are tired. So very tired. We gave you 340 years. We hoped you would change. You did not. So we are leaving. And we are not coming back. The screen went dark. Sola sat in silence, the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. She opened the files. They were organized by decade, by incident, by crime. The Taijin massacre was there, complete with communications showing Council leadership knew it would happen and did nothing. The technology theft was there, with video of human scientists weeping as their life's work was seized. The breeding laws were there, along with the private conversations where Council members admitted they feared human population growth. It was all there. Every sin, every failure, every moment when the Council could have chosen better and had not, Sola made her decision. She began copying the files, preparing to release them to every independent media outlet in Council space. The Council needed to see this. The people needed to know what had been done in their names. Outside her window, another section of the station went dark as human systems continued to fail. The collapse was accelerating, and they had done it to themselves. The documentary spread like fire through Council space. Sola had released the files to every news network, every independent journalist, every public forum she could find. Within days, billions of citizens across dozens of worlds were watching the truth unfold before their eyes. The Taijin massacre footage was the worst. Security cameras had captured everything. The human colony had been thriving. 40,000 people living in peace on a verdant world they had terraformed over 3 generations. Then the Chilix military had arrived for training exercises. The children had been in school when the bombardment began. The parents had been in the fields, in the factories, in their homes. The colony's desperate distress calls had gone unanswered. Council ships had been close enough to intervene but had been ordered to stay away. When it ended, nothing remained but craters and ash. The official report had called it a regrettable accident due to miscommunication. The unofficial truth, now public, showed that Chilix nobles had wanted the planet for a hunting preserve. The humans had been in the way. So they had been removed. Nobody had been punished. Nobody had even been reprimanded. The Council had paid a small compensation to human families and declared the matter closed. 70 years ago, and the wound had never healed. Costel watched the footage in her office, forcing herself to see every moment. She had been a junior council member when it happened. She had voted with the majority to accept the official report. She had believed the Chilix assurances that it would never happen again. She had been wrong. She had been complicit. The other revelations kept coming. The technology seizure laws had forced human innovators to surrender their discoveries without payment. A brilliant scientist named Jiwan had invented a medical device that could cure 3 previously fatal diseases. The Council had taken the patents, manufactured billions of units, and given Jiwan a certificate of appreciation. He had died in poverty while Council corporations made fortunes from his work. The breeding restrictions had been particularly cruel. Humans could have 2 children per family and no more. Other species had no such limits. The reasoning, according to internal Council documents, was that humans bred too quickly and showed aggressive expansion tendencies. The real reason, revealed in private messages between Council members, was fear. Fear that if humans multiplied freely, they would outnumber other species. The trial footage was hardest to watch. For 15 years, humans accused of crimes had been denied legal representation. The Council had ruled that human defendants were too emotionally manipulative, and that allowing them lawyers would compromise judicial fairness. The result had been predictable. Innocent humans had been convicted on false evidence while guilty aliens had walked free. A woman named Yunji had spent 12 years in prison for a theft she had not committed. The real thief, a Draenei merchant, had confessed years later. Yunji had been released with an apology, but no compensation for the years stolen from her life. The documentary showed all of it. And the citizens of Council Space began to understand what had been done. Protests erupted on dozens of worlds. Not just humans, Sola realized with surprise. No humans remained in Council Space to protest, but other species filled the streets demanding accountability. Draenei citizens called for Kostel's resignation. Chilik's youth denounced Velthar and his generation. The Varkon military refused to follow orders until their leadership addressed the crimes. Then, in the middle of the crisis, every screen in Council Space went dark for exactly 10 seconds. When they came back on, a human face appeared. Not a recording this time. Live. The woman was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and the calm authority of someone who had spent years in leadership. Her uniform was unfamiliar, marked with symbols that did not match any council military. "My name is Bora," she said. "Some of you have seen my files. Now I will give you context." She stood in what looked like a command center, though the technology visible behind her was far more advanced than anything in Council Space. "I served the Council for 23 years. I believed in what we could build together. Many humans did. We worked hard. We sacrificed. We hoped that our contributions would earn us respect and equality." Bora's expression did not change, but her eyes carried decades of disappointment. "We were wrong. The Council did not see us as partners. It saw us as resources, useful tools that could be discarded when inconvenient." Behind her, data began scrolling across screens. Financial records, communications logs, video footage. Here is what your leaders did not want you to know. The council members who accepted bribes to vote against human interests. The pharmaceutical companies that tested experimental drugs on human colonists without consent. The nobility that hunted humans for sport on frontier worlds. The leadership that knew about all of it and chose to do nothing. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank transactions showing millions of credits changing hands. Messages between council members discussing how to suppress human rights without causing public backlash. Medical records showing hundreds of humans who had died in illegal experiments. Hunting lodge footage showing Chilik's aristocrats displaying human skulls as trophies. Kostel watched from the council chamber, along with every other member who had responded to her emergency summons. She felt physically sick. Some of this she had suspected. Much of it she had not. All of it was true. Velthar stood abruptly. "This is fabricated. Human lies designed to—" "It is not fabricated," Kostel interrupted quietly. "I recognize some of these files. They came from my own office. It is all real." Bora continued speaking. "We gave you 340 years. We built your stations. We fought your wars. We fed your people. We asked only for equality, for justice, for the basic respect you gave every other species. You refused. Again and again you refused." She leaned forward, her voice hardening. "So we have concluded that coexistence is impossible. We are not seeking revenge. We are seeking separation. We have left. We will not return, and you are not welcome to follow. This is not anger speaking. This is not emotion. This is a logical decision based on centuries of data. You cannot change. You have proven that. So we are removing ourselves from the situation." Bora straightened. "We are not your enemies. We do not wish you harm, but we do not trust you, and we have no reason to. If you attempt to find us, you will be turned back. Your ships will not be harmed, but they will not be allowed to pass. If you respect our boundaries, we will establish limited trade relationships. Fair trade, between equals, with contracts that both sides honor. That is all we offer." She paused, and for the first time something like sadness crossed her face. "We wanted to believe in the council. We wanted to belong, but you would not let us. So we are building something new, something better, without you. Do not mistake our mercy for weakness," Bora added, her voice firm again. "Do not mistake our departure for defeat. We are leaving because we choose to, not because we must. Remember that." The screen went dark. The council chamber sat in silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The weight of centuries of injustice pressed down on them all. Finally, a young Keltorian representative stood. What do we do now? Costel looked around the chamber, at the faces of representatives who had just learned their government had committed atrocities, at the empty seats where humans had once sat, at the dying station around them, proof that humanity had been the foundation of everything they had taken for granted. We face what we have done, she said quietly, and then we try to become worthy of the second chance we do not deserve. But she knew, as everyone knew, that humanity was not coming back. They had left, and they had every right to. The Council had lost not just a member species but its moral authority, and nothing would ever be the same. The morning shift began like any other in the Nexus station. Workers moved through the corridors preparing for another day of galactic administration. The coffee dispensers hummed. The air recyclers maintained their steady rhythm. Everything seemed normal until the cleaning crew reached the human delegation quarters. The doors opened to empty rooms. Not just empty in the sense that people had left for breakfast. Empty like nobody had ever lived there. The beds were made. The closets stood open and bare. The personal terminals sat on desks, their screens dark and lifeless. Ambassador Hyun's office showed no signs of the man who had worked there for 12 years. His collection of Earth botanical prints was gone. His favorite tea set had vanished. Even the family photos that usually cluttered his desk were nowhere to be found. The cleaning supervisor stood in the doorway, confused. She called her manager. The manager called security. Security called the council administration. Within an hour, the entire administrative level was swarming with officials trying to understand what had happened. Velthar arrived at the scene with his usual air of superiority. The Chilix council member stood nearly 8 feet tall, his exoskeleton gleaming under the station lights. His compound eyes surveyed the empty quarters with what might have been amusement if anyone could read Chilix expressions. Humans, he clicked, his translator rendering the sound into something like laughter. Always so dramatic. They have probably gone on one of their emotional retreats. They will return when they remember they need us more than we need them. Supreme Arbiter Costel did not share Velthar's confidence. The Draenei leader's blue skin had paled to an almost white shade, a clear sign of distress among her people. She stood in Hyun's former office, her webbed hands clasped behind her back. Check all human quarters, she ordered. Every delegation, every worker, every resident on this station. I want a full count within the hour. The count came back 0. Every human on Nexus Station had disappeared. 347 people gone without a trace. But it was worse than that. Much worse. Reports began flooding in from across council space. The human colony on Brevik 7 was empty. Every building stood intact, every system running, but not a single human remained. The agricultural stations in the Kelsier sector reported the same. Human farms operated on automatic, crops growing in perfect rows, but the farmers had vanished. The human merchant fleet, thousands of vessels that connected council worlds through trade, had stopped responding to communications. Long-range scans found the ships drifting in space, engines cold, holds full of cargo but crews nowhere to be found. The human military contingent stationed at the border worlds had withdrawn overnight. Their barracks stood empty. Their weapons remained in armories neatly stored and accounted for. Their defense positions were abandoned but intact. Costel called an emergency council session. Representatives from all 47 member species gathered in the Grand Chamber, a massive dome that could hold thousands. The noise of confused, frightened aliens filled the space. Order, Costel called, her voice amplified across the chamber. We face an unprecedented situation. The human species has left council space. All 8.4 billion of them have disappeared within a 72-hour window. The chamber erupted. Species shouted in dozens of languages, the translators struggling to keep up, fear and confusion mixed with anger and accusation. This is impossible, declared Morven of the Keltorians. Billions of people cannot simply vanish. Yet they have, Costel replied. We have searched every human settlement, every station, every vessel. They are gone. Did they leave any message? Asked Sola, a young Draenei analyst sitting in the observation section. She was not supposed to speak in session, but the question escaped her before she could stop it. Costel looked at her, then nodded slowly. Yes, one message. It broadcasts on repeat on all human frequencies. It says, you were warned. You did not listen. Do not follow. The chamber fell silent. Those 4 simple sentences carried a weight that pressed down on everyone present. Velthar rose from his seat. This is clearly a bluff. Some kind of human trick. They think they can pressure us into better trade terms or more representation. We should declare them in violation of council agreements and seize their abandoned assets. Seize their assets? Sola spoke again, louder this time. Their assets are keeping half the council alive right now. Who do you think maintains the food distribution networks? Who designed the defensive systems protecting the core worlds? Who? Enough, Kostel interrupted, though her tone was gentle. But the analyst raises good points. We need to understand the full extent of human involvement in council operations. Over the following days, that understanding grew into horror. The humans had not just been members of the council. They had been the infrastructure. Their engineering genius had built the stations everyone lived on. Their agricultural innovations had ended famine on a dozen worlds. Their diplomatic corps had negotiated peace between species that would never have spoken to each other otherwise, and now they were gone. Sola worked through the night, compiling reports. She found something that made her blood run cold. The humans had been planning this. For years, perhaps decades, they had been quietly withdrawing. Resources had been moved. Ships had been built in secret. Personnel had been transferred to deep space research stations that apparently never existed. She brought her findings to Kostel in the early morning hours. The Arbiter listened in silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. They fooled us completely, Kostel whispered. While we debated their place in the council, while we wrote new restrictions on their activities, while we dismissed their concerns as human emotionalism, they were leaving. What could make an entire species do this? Sola asked. Kostel did not answer. She could not. Because deep down she suspected she knew. She had been in council leadership for 40 years. She had seen the votes. She had heard the debates. She had watched as human proposals for equal treatment were dismissed, as their complaints were ignored, as their contributions were taken for granted. The humans had not left out of anger. They had left out of exhaustion. They had simply stopped trying to make the council listen and had walked away. The station's lights flickered. Power fluctuations had become common in the past few days. The human engineers who had maintained the systems were gone, and nobody else fully understood their work. In the darkness of her office, Kostel finally understood. The humans had not just left. They had given up on them entirely, and perhaps, she thought with growing dread, they had been right to do so. 1 year after humanity's departure, Velthar made his move. He had spent months since the Armada's humiliation building support among the hardline factions. His message was simple. The current council leadership had lost humanity through weakness. Strong leadership would either bring them back or prove the council did not need them. He struck during a routine council session. Armed supporters blocked the exits while Velthar declared Kostel unfit for leadership. The attempted coup lasted 6 hours before Varkan security forces intervened and arrested everyone involved. But the damage was done. The council had turned on itself. Trust between species had evaporated. 8 more species formally withdrew, leaving only 36 members. The economy had contracted by 40%. Starvation had spread to 20 worlds. Sola, now promoted to senior analyst, watched the chaos from her office. She had spent the year compiling information for what she called The Human Question, a comprehensive documentary examining how the council had failed. It was longer than her first release. More detailed, more damning. She had interviewed thousands of citizens across dozens of species. Draenei doctors who had unknowingly used medicines developed through illegal human experiments. Chilix veterans who had participated in the Tajin massacre and carried the guilt ever since. Keltorian students who had studied human literature and wondered why such creative, compassionate beings had been treated so cruelly. The documentary released the day after Velthar's failed coup. It spread even faster than the first. This time it was not just evidence of crimes. It was a meditation on failure, on missed opportunities, on the cost of prejudice and arrogance. The public reaction was overwhelming. Protests evolved into demands for fundamental change, not just punishment for the guilty, but reform of the entire system. The younger generations especially were furious. They had grown up with human neighbors, human teachers, human friends. Now those people were gone, and they wanted accountability. Kostel, still clinging to power despite growing calls for her resignation, made a decision. She would hold trials, not show trials meant to deflect blame, Real trials with real evidence broadcast to all council space. The council would face its sins publicly. The first trial began 3 months after Velthar's coup attempt. The defendant was Velthar himself, along with 34 other council members accused of crimes against humanity. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, communication logs, video footage, testimony from accomplices seeking reduced sentences. The prosecution presented case after case. Velthar had accepted bribes from corporations that exploited human workers. He had voted against human rights proposals while receiving payments from species who benefited from human oppression. He had personally authorized hunting expeditions that had killed humans on frontier worlds. But the most powerful moment came when a human appeared on the screens. His name was Jae-hyun. He was 60 years old with silver hair and scars that covered his exposed arms. He appeared via secure transmission from somewhere in human space, his location undisclosed. "I volunteered to testify," Jae-hyun said, his voice steady despite the visible pain in his eyes. "I want you to understand what was done to us." He described his experience as a test subject in medical experiments conducted by a Drenai pharmaceutical corporation. He had been 22 years old, a student who had volunteered for what he was told was a routine drug trial. Instead, he had been subjected to 3 years of experimental procedures without proper consent or medical care. The courtroom fell silent as Jae-hyun showed his scars. Burns from chemical exposure, surgical marks from procedures that had never healed properly, the visible evidence of torture conducted in the name of profit, with council oversight that had looked the other way. "They told me it was necessary," Jae-hyun said quietly. "That human biology was different enough that we needed special testing. That our sacrifice would save millions of lives across the galaxy. I believed them. I endured it because I thought I was helping." He paused, his hands shaking slightly. "Later I learned the drugs they tested on me were approved for other species without such testing. Human biology was not special. They used us because they could. Because we had no legal protection. Because the council allowed it." Jae-hyun looked directly at the camera. "I survived. Hundreds of others did not. My friend Sumi died on that testing bed, begging for help that never came. She was 19 years old. She wanted to be a teacher." The courtroom remained silent. Many observers were crying openly. Even some of the defendants looked shaken. "I do not hate you," Jae-hyun continued, his voice strengthening. "We do not hate you. We pity you. You had a chance to be better. You chose not to. Again and again you chose cruelty over kindness, profit over people, power over justice." He leaned forward. "Now you face the consequences. Not punishment from us. We are not interested in revenge. But you must face what you did. You must acknowledge it. You must carry that weight. Because we carried it for 340 years and now it is your turn." "You lost us," Jae-hyun said simply. "Not because we were weak. Not because you were strong. But because you were unworthy of us. Remember that. Every day remember that you had something precious and you threw it away." The transmission ended. The courtroom sat in absolute silence for nearly a minute, before the presiding judge finally called for a recess. The verdict, when it came weeks later, surprised nobody. Velthar and the other defendants were found guilty on multiple counts. Sentences ranged from exile to permanent removal from public service to financial restitution that would bankrupt several of them. But enforcement was difficult. The council's justice system was in shambles. Many of the convicted simply fled to worlds outside council jurisdiction. The sentences were symbolic. The real punishment was public disgrace and the knowledge that history would remember their crimes. 3 days after the verdict, a message arrived from human space. It came through official diplomatic channels, properly formatted and addressed to Kostel personally. The sender was identified as Eunji, first counselor of the Human Commonwealth. "We have watched your trials," the message began. "We acknowledge your attempt at justice. It changes nothing for us, but perhaps it will change something for you. We are establishing limited trade relationships with the Council, medical supplies for your world's facing crisis, agricultural products to ease your food shortages, educational resources for your young who seek knowledge. These will be provided at fair market value with proper contracts that both sides will honor. We will not provide military technology. We will not share our advanced systems. We will not return to Council space. But we will not watch you starve if you approach us honestly and treat us as equals. Yunji's message continued. This is your galaxy now. You must make it better than you made it for us. You must learn the lessons we could not teach you. You must become worthy of the second chance we are offering. We do not do this out of love. We do not do this out of obligation. We do this because it is right. Because someone must be better. Because the cycle of cruelty must end somewhere, and we choose to end it here. The message concluded simply. Trade negotiations will begin in 3 months. Send honest representatives. We will know if you attempt deception. Do not test us again. Costel read the message repeatedly. Humanity was offering help to the people who had oppressed them for centuries. Not out of weakness. Not out of some need for reconciliation. But because they had chosen to be better than their oppressors. The shame was overwhelming. The Council had not just lost humanity. It had lost the moral high ground entirely. And now it had to live with that knowledge, accepting charity from those it had wronged, trying to rebuild a civilization that humans had carried for generations. Sola visited Costel that evening. The old arbiter looked exhausted, her blue skin pale and drawn. They are better than us, Costel said quietly. After everything we did, they are still better than us. Sola nodded. Yes, they always were. We just refuse to see it. Can we change? Costel asked.
Can the Council become what it should have been?
Maybe, Sola replied, but it will take generations, and humanity will not be here to see it. We lost that privilege. Outside the window, the station's lights flickered less frequently now. Engineers had learned to maintain the human systems, slowly, painfully. Life continued, but nothing would ever be the same. The Council had seen what it could have been, reflected in humanity's departure, and that mirror would haunt them forever.